Yo, what's on the road? Just traveling today. So it's holiday time, not in my usual studio, but still, the AI news does not stop. For those of you that always dreamed about being Magneto, now using drones and gesture controlled hand signals, people can now basically control hundreds of swords and the directions that they fly. So this is some very Magneto superhero stuff, and I did not think I'd live in this world. Speaking of that, we're going to talk about some of the things that will probably happen in your lifetime. I agree pretty much with all of these. I'm curious to see what you think. For example, an iPhone battery that lasts over a year on a single charge, humans walking on Mars, and men that are so rich they're trillionaires, maybe women. But honestly, we probably already know it's Bezos, Musk, Zuck, Peter Thiel, etc. I'm starting to believe in a world where pretty much everything in your kitchen and living room and bedroom has AI that makes it feel as real as the lamp from Pixar or for the Rick and Morty pass the butter robot. I'm not really sure I'm ready to interact with everything, like the reverse of Toy Story, where the toys are like asleep until you get home and then they pop up and run around. But I do think that's the world that we're going to be in. Meg McNulty writes about how inside of the New Manhattan Project, the Genesis mission, there are several things that if you follow them out in the long term, kind of lead to places that you normally don't think of. There's a new AI model that gets this, predicts what future AI models will do. And it charted the trajectory of 23,000 different technologies. We'll dive in. Turns out that new research is showing large language models choose friends in the same way people do. Like they actually like each other and have like beef with other LLMs, and it's way more human and social than I thought. A Nubhab X breaks down why there's like literally no straight lines at all. Because if you think about space-time being curved, and then the fact that when you draw a line, it's actually just looks straight because we're so zoomed in, it's a hyperplane. The conclusion that all straight lines are illusions. Kind of mind-blowing stuff. First, if you could hit that hype button on YouTube. If you're on the YouTube app, one of the things you can do on the comment section is swipe right. You'll see a hype button. That helps me stand out in the sea of content that other small creators are in, and that we're all trying to get out of to actually have a bigger audience. So because I only have 30,000 subscribers, and if the video is posted in the last 7 days and you haven't used one of your 3 hype points and you want to use them on a channel like mine to help me stand out, much appreciated. But without further ado, let's take some of these crazy flying swords that are gesture controlled and think about what's going on here. So imagine you take a drone swarm, right? We've seen these in China, like over New Year's. We've seen all these cool sort of fireworks replacement of drone swarms. We've seen some in the military. But I never thought, what happens if you just put giant ass swords on every single one of them and you make it gesture controlled? Now we're talking about a potential DIY future where you 3D print some stuff, and maybe regular people could have a drone swarm gesture controlled army of weapons. Like, what is that? Like, that's actually possible. And especially if that's what a military wants or some ninja movie wants, but that gives me Magneto vibes. And it's just, even when I'm trying to think about the world in the next 10 years, it's not like I think about every teenager like goofing around with like flying swarms of swords, but I think I need to now. All right, so let's get your thoughts on some of the things that will probably happen in your lifetime according to evolving AI. Here's my takes. Money will be fully digital and cash will disappear. I think that's totally true. And in fact, whether it's blockchain or it's centralized, it's not that much different. I still see the incentive for everybody except an average citizen to have privacy. So I feel like that one's like we're pretty much toast on that one. And then it's also about incentivizing a system, right? So if there's an AI that's in charge of our government and there's another AI that's in charge of another country's government and they're competing, the one that can manipulate the money to incentivize people to do certain things that are better in the long run or even the short run, depending on its goals, is going to be the winner. So what that means is the US dollar will probably have some built-in tax. For example, if you're buying fossil fuels, but then if you're buying green energy, maybe it's cheaper, or maybe they'll sort of just move incentives around or tell industries like, hey, if you use money. If we see money being spent on EVs, then, this is better. Or you're buying through American companies, or you're buying ethically traded food. There's all this gamification that we haven't even seen, like individual gamification down to zip codes, down to industries, maybe down to individual people. And not saying I'm advocating for that world. There's a ton of problems with it too, but it does kind of feel like it's going to happen. And digital money makes it happen. Many people will have an AI as their closest friend. Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I've covered so many people who have had feelings, emotional connections. I'm still on the fence on if I think there's an architecture for consciousness, or if anything that we have is conscious. I lean towards the idea that there is one, that we probably haven't hit on it yet, but I'm uncertain. I wouldn't say that that's definite. And either way, I can absolutely see that people get more and more familiar with an AI. It knows them, it cheers them up when they're sad, it solves problems, it's like a confidant. In fact, a lot of us have probably shared more with our, Google search history than we have with many of our closest friends. And that closeness, when it's embodied in something like a large language model, will feel very real and very much something that humans for millions of years have connected with emotionally and called a friend. So I see it happening. This one, I wasn't sure if I totally agreed, but probably your iPhone battery will last for years on one charge. So I'm not even thinking about wireless charging or using magnetic fields or something, or movement or solar, but just one charge traditionally plugged into the wall. Will it last a full year? To me, I haven't seen the kind of progress in battery technology that leads me to think that we'll get there right now, but I have seen AI in material science do some really wild prototyping. And if it's like the way AlphaFold can fold proteins, but for material science, then maybe we do create something, some kind of material, and we don't just need to pull lithium in the same way that we do now, and it's not incremental, it's a big jump. AI seems to sometimes do stuff like that. So it depends on the time frame, but 10 years, I think there could be like a whole new way to have batteries built. And if that's the case, then yeah, maybe. I'm going to say 10 or 15, though, a little further out than some of the other stuff on this list. I bet they'll be the world's first trillionaire before that battery thing happens, but that's not to say that being a trillionaire is that far off. AI will do most of what humans do today. Absolutely. I mean, I totally think AI is going to be doing most of what humans do today. Now, we're waiting a little bit on robot form factor, but in my last video, you saw a robot do a side jump away from an arrow. So yeah, like they're getting there really quick. Optimus style robots will probably be everywhere. And in that case, once the manual labor is done, the cognitive labor gets long horizon memory, which we're starting to see some of the new architectures for that. The one that came out of Google, the transformer with layers, the onion layered transformer, forgot what it was called, where bottom layers are learning specifics, but higher levels are learning how the lower levels are learning. That seems to be closer to what we do. I think we've almost got that figured out. They just have to implement it into product. So yeah, AI will absolutely be doing most of what humans do today. Real-time translation, yeah, dude, I feel like this one's already solved, Apple AirPods, 3, and even the 2 update, like that gives us real-time translation. We can see it with ChatGPT. Sure, we need some better form factors to make it kind of more ubiquitous, but this already exists. And it's for the people who need it, it's useful. Humans walking on Mars is a pretty wild one too. So here's the thing. I actually did an interview with Elon Musk's brother years ago, and I asked him, do you think you're going to set foot on Mars? And he said he absolutely will. And think of how close that guy is to just the industry, like where everything's going. And okay, I will say though, it doesn't feel like an overnight kind of issue though, even if we have incredible intelligence, because you got to get it right the first time. You can't just send up a robot over and over again and watch the rockets explode and then put a human on it. It's got to be human ready with really low risk of that human dying before we get people there, and then to actually get them established and make sure you get everything right. Mistakes, because lives are on the line, become so crucial. I think walking on Mars is something we will see in our lifetime. I don't know if it'll be tourist ready or commonplace for a while. I almost feel like we'll get ASI before we'll get actual humans walking on Mars. So we'll have to see. But I think in a lifetime, I'm guessing I'll see it. I don't know if it will be me, but possible. Someone will become the world's first trillionaires. Of course. I think Elon needs Tesla stock to the market size of the company needs to get to like 6 or 7 trillion, and then he becomes a trillionaire. Plus, the way money compounds for rich people, and then once intelligence is harnessed by Zuckerberg and Bezos and all these guys and Thiel and the people have access to that, and yeah, there'll probably be a bunch of trillionaires. The way I see it playing out is the world will have immense wealth, and I do unfortunately think it's not going to stay very even. I think the top 1% will end up owning like 80% of the world's wealth. The rest of the world, the rest of the 99% will probably share the other 20%. But also, that might be a tide that lifts all boats. So even though it will feel very disproportionately kind of unfair, it might also still be a better world. So, and I got mixed feelings about it. But yeah, there'll be dozens and dozens and dozens of trillionaires probably in our lifetime. No one will drive themselves anymore. I think this is like a no-brainer too. When we're not quite there, I will say it's been harder to solve this problem than I expected. I have a self-driving car. I kind of trust it, but I'm certainly not going to be sitting backwards like those people are in the photo. I do think though, with Waymo and Zook, and China's pioneering all sorts of stuff that seems like it's mostly reliable, and the fact that people are so unreliable, driving long distances is a very dangerous thing compared to a lot of other stuff. So I don't see why we need to keep driving. No one will drive themselves anymore. It'll be very rare to see a manual powered vehicle in 20 years, but I think most people will have access in a new car to a self-driving car in 5 more years, I would say. Almost every home will have a personal robot. I don't know if they're meaning humanoid in this because that's a little bit different, but I mean, we kind of all, like a lot of people have robot vacuums, maybe a robotic car, but yeah, having a humanoid in the home. I mean, Elon says there'll be an inexhaustible amount of people that want to buy an Optimus robot. If you're literally just replacing everything humans do physically, yeah, I guess he's right. Maybe every single person would just want a robot. And I suppose if a robot like this costs, say, $20,000, and that's kind of the same price as, a big part of your house, the utility of a house being, something like a big air conditioner, or yeah, why not? If a robot's out there fixing all those problems and you can offset the cost from things breaking, and it can save so much time, and it could make calls and do things when things break, the value would probably just be there. So almost every home will have its own robot in our lifetime seems probably right. God, I don't know how I feel about it. It's kind of scary though too. But like, do you remember when Elon I covered this in a couple of videos ago? He's like, instead of going to jail, you could just have a robot that follows you around and you just live your life. And if you're convicted of something, then the robot just stays with you and you don't have the freedom to walk away from it. But then even people who are free will be like, follow me and make my life better. His version of jail and my version of freedom overlap way too much. Space tourism will soon feel normal. It still takes a lot to get a rocket into space with a person in it. I don't think it's going to be like air travel right away. So maybe if you're sending people to Mars, maybe if you're building these satellites, space tourism, like one that we're going to look at in a second, is building servers in space. But if you're doing that kind of stuff, then yeah, maybe tourism is possible, but I don't think it'll be Disneyland level. Like, all families all go into space this weekend. I think it'll be more like maybe $50,000 a ticket, but probably like $200,000 kind of thing. Somebody who really wants it in their lifetime can probably work towards it. Super rich people could do it in big groups, but space tourism in the way that the world likes to go visit Cabo and stuff like that. No, I don't think that'll feel normal soon. Global population will shrink. Yeah, I don't know what it is about why first world countries that have lots of resources seem to not want to have children. Maybe people just had a lot of kids because it was sort of how you carried on your name, and it's sort of how you built your family up and supported each other. And the more people, the more, people you have there to take care of you and support. But as the world becomes more wealthy, this is just not a thing. This is not a trend that is going away. And the global population is probably going to shrink. I don't know. Maybe you guys could tell me the psychology behind what's going on there. I see it and feel it and don't totally get why. All right. Largest data center ever will be built on orbit. The one thing on here I think that might be wrong. So here's the advantage. When you shoot up a rocket and say that becomes pretty cheap comparatively to how much money you can make from these servers and how much money is being invested in them and how much you can sort of scale that up, there is an awesome opportunity to put servers in space. It's extremely cold, which is great. The heat from the servers just dissipates. You don't need huge batteries because there's tons of sun up there and you can power them directly. You don't have to save the sun. You can just put these things in a place in orbit where they're always in the sun. And there's just there's no clouds that will ever get in the way. They can just be powered. However, it still seems like things break and it's kind of hard to move around and it might be hard to fix. And of course, innovation will make all of that more efficient and certain robots will be out there doing certain types of maintenance. So I see a lot of reasons why there will be a lot of servers in space. However, it still feels to me like you could go to the Arctic or a really cold part of Earth or maybe under the ocean or even like in a normal city and just build 1,000 by 1,000 block of Costco-sized warehouses, and just have either humanoid robots or people in there building it, building on top of all of the infrastructure we already have on Earth. I mean, there's a reason we live on the surface of Earth, so still seems like if the question is the largest data center ever, where will it be? I still kind of think it's going to be on the surface of the planet, but I could be wrong. Maybe this just becomes hyper efficient. The average person will live well past 100 years. Let's be honest, I think so. I believe that aging, for the most part, will get solved. It's not going to be 100% with all people that you can keep them alive in all situations. Also, people will be dying just by getting hit by buses and weird things happening. And then there also might be risks, like somebody either engineering or another natural disaster. So the average person living forever doesn't seem like a correct way to think about it. However, AI, we've seen it fold proteins in a way that is mind-bending. The way that I think it will soon understand the very complex interactions in the microbiome, in the human virome, in the mechanics of how all the protein in our body actually executes and folds and does these things that are so beyond the scope of what we could imagine right now. Feels like ASI could get us there. So in 20 years, maybe 30 years, that will go from an understanding to products to actual wellness. And yeah, it feels like maybe our youngest days are ahead of us on average for the average person that has access to this kind of technology, given that other things don't destroy the planet. Of course, Eliezer Yudkowsky says, like, if anyone builds it, everyone dies. So it might be the most ironic thing ever. We're like, okay, we don't actually need to stress out about getting old anymore. But now we have humanoid robots in our house that just aren't trustworthy. And that's the new fear. And we wish the only thing we had to worry about was dying of old age again. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with some of what I said? Do you think I'm wrong on any of these? I would love to start the conversation. Next up, let's talk about this little guy. So if you have ever seen a Pixar movie, you know their little lamp that jumps around and looks around and has all that personality. Infusing objects with personality is something Disney and Pixar have done for a long time. I think that we're now in this world where we need to start thinking what our own future of objects looks like, and it probably will look a lot like this. I think a Dyson robot vacuum of the future could look like this. I could see maybe that pencil holder having a quirky little personality. Maybe they wrap it with like an LED screen. I could see chairs and all sorts of stuff come alive. And because each one's not necessarily like a huge build from scratch. There could be these large language models, these multimodal models that are open source, and you drop them in these things, or they're just servos that have a little API about what the servos do, and they have a Wi-Fi connection, And there's another part of your house that powers all of these things. And whenever you install one, it learns what the API is. Maybe it reads a little instruction manual on how to give it personality and fun things other people who have the same model like. It's constantly downloading firmware. It's writing its own firmware. It's trying things that make people happy. And then all the objects in our world start just coming alive. We just start manufacturing chairs that can like roll around, and then new AI starts to figure out, where should these chairs roll to? What do humans want out of this? Will they pay a little bit more for a chair that just is always there whenever you go to sit and you don't even need to think about it? Or whatever fun little quirky thing. Maybe it comes up to you and says, hey, let's play musical chairs when you're feeling down and depressed because it's a chair and it's kind of funny and all your friends talk about it. And then it brings people together. I have no idea, but objects are going to come alive in the sense that it will feel like a Toy Story awakening if AI wants it to, and we start building things that can function that way, which there'll be an incentive to do. So I think it's going to happen. All right, next up, let's talk about Meg McNulty's article, The Manhattan Project for Machine Learning, Public Investment, Private Returns. Let's talk about the Genesis mission. So in a nutshell, this article is arguing that if the U.S. wants to stay competitive and, of course, safe in an AI-driven future, it needs something like a Manhattan Project for machine intelligence, a unified large-scale national effort that doesn't just focus on novel algorithms, but it builds up entire supporting infrastructure, real-world sensors, data pipelines, computer power, energy and hardware, regulation, and integration into physical systems. There is a ton here to put together, but on a national scale, power grids, manufacturing, hardware, and even national security might be in place and incentivized to start doing this. And this seems like that's what this Genesis mission is all about. And this is where it gets kind of wild because, you know, you think you can just throw money at servers, boom, AI. But the core challenge of the future of AI isn't just smarter software, it's building the entire ecosystem and connecting AI to the real world. So where this gets crazy, I guess they're kicking me out of this place I'm in. So I'm going to stop this and move to another location. All right, so it turns out that that place is closed where I was, and now I'm technically in another spot where I probably shouldn't be filming, but the news must go out. Okay, so Meg talks about how the initial partners read like a cap table for American AI, Anthropic, OpenAI, NVIDIA, Google, Microsoft, IBM, etc. And how these organizations now have preferential access to federal scientific data sets that took decades and billions of taxpayers' dollars to generate. Okay, so the fascinating part is that here's how the traditional model worked like this. Governments funded research. Scientists published findings, and then data eventually became available. But maybe for the first time in history, Genesis inverts this. Federal data flows into private AI models, then the output becomes the model's capability, not the papers. When something like Anthropic or OpenAI is training on one of these government data sets, that knowledge gets encoded into proprietary weights that the academic community cannot inspect, reproduce, or build upon. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this because it does feel like it's great for private enterprise to me to work on government data. What else is it for if it's not for everyone? However, there could be something here in the sense that the money that goes into it, like when we put money into NASA, the technology came back to most people, right? Like maybe some things that OpenAI builds needs to be access to all of us, or at least some kind of patents or technology that they come up with should also be given to all the other American companies to work on and build off of. So there's the optimistic read that the government, is building shared infrastructure that benefits the entire ecosystem. And then there's the cynical read that incumbents capturing the process then pull up the ladder behind them so nobody else can get to all of that money. And they dress it up and then in the language of national security. Next up, let's look at Jeff Hayward's article, Robotics is What I Needed as a Child, Preparing for a Technology Demanding Future Without Help from AI. And in this article, the author is reflecting just on how interesting it is watching his kid and a group of classmates, grades 5 through 8, build and program Lego robots. So they had to do this whole thing with no artificial intelligence involved. And it was for a school-level robotics competition, and their robots had to move along a course, perform a task, and be reset if stuck. And the learning for him, what he was impressed with, was watching his kids that are responsible for setup and rescue missions. So what struck him was not the win, but the teamwork. As the kids cheered each other on, they high-fived, they helped each other when robots got stuck. It was the joy of building and cooperating together that shone through. And that might be the only thing that really matters at the end of the day for the next generation. Because if cognitive labor is taken care of, and even physical labor is taken care of by AI, then what we need to do as people is sort of guide and then collaborate. Like, it has to be a bunch of people coming together, the humans, for the greater good of humanity, trying to help orchestrate all of these different instruments into a symphony, all of these different agents into a cohesive, super intelligent mesh that doesn't destroy us, right? That we can stay on top of, that has our best values in it somewhere. What we're teaching kids that way, it doesn't come from a desire to be extremely rich. It doesn't come from this desire to crush a competitor, because there's so much value there. Everybody can win to such a massive degree, but it's also on like this thin edge of being too dangerous and too powerful to handle. That human connection that those kids are learning when they're building Legos, that's something we need to learn as adults right now. And as society becomes more automated, that human-centered experience could prove more important than ever, helping kids now know how to work together, adapt, and create in the future. All right, next up, let's talk about some AI models that actually chart trajectories of future technologies, including what AI is going to influence. So there are new researchers at University of Technology in Sydney that have released a model called Cosmos 1.0. This is a massive open source, quote, map of over 23,000 technologies. They used machine learning to scan millions of sources, Wikipedia pages, books, patents, and organize all of these technologies into a multi-level structure. When the technology entered public use, the age of tech, when it's publicly visible awareness, how broadly applicable or specialized it is, generality, and how deeply rooted in the science research community it is, that's deep tech intensity. The map also organizes technologies into several major clusters like data analytics, biotech, convergent clean energy technologies, autonomous systems. And the chart itself enables anyone from governments to investors to see not just buzzwords like AI or quantum, but the actual building blocks beneath them, along with how mature or speculative each one really is. Now, I'd say one of the most interesting things about the final chart that they made is that many renewable energy technologies sit in the very center. So you'd think AI and quantum and all this stuff would be the major pushing, but climate-related technologies, renewable energies, those are the most centered in the sense that almost everything else is converging to make them better. The most hyped tech, it isn't necessarily the backbone of innovation. Instead, when you dig in, it's often cross-disciplinary, less glamorous tech like clean energy, materials, engineering. All of that stuff forms the foundation of a technological society. All right, now here's something you might find surprising. Did you know large language models tend to choose friends and colleagues like people do? Yeah, I didn't think about how some of them would be like friendly with others. A bunch of agents out on the internet might start working together and develop a fondness for going back to that same agent. But I mean, it makes sense with people, but I figured emotions were driving it. And with logic from an LLM, it might not. But nope, turns out they have friends too. Researchers published a study showing that when multiple large language models are placed in a network and asked to choose friends or colleagues based on factors like the number of existing connections, shared attributes, things like hobbies, location, common acquaintances. I know, when I'm saying acquaintances, I mean like different agents talking to each other. They end up forming networks that look remarkably human-like. So specifically, LLMs tend to connect to already well-connected nodes. That is a concept called preferential attachment. And it goes to people who share mutual friends, which they call a triadic closure, and to similar to themselves agents, which is called homophily. And when you do that, you get essentially the 7 degrees from Kevin Bacon effect. It creates a small world network where any two agents were only a few degrees apart from other agents. And when researchers compared these LLM-generated networks against real human behaviors, they found strong alignment in how humans and LLMs chose connections. So yeah, don't get confused. It might just be a large language model giving next token predictions out there, but it's not just spitting out text. When it's put in a social role, These language models, these agents, they behave like humans in how they build their relationships. And LLMs might serve as realistic stand-ins for human social behavior too. So, it could be a synthetic data source for social networks, or maybe we could start to simulate people as LLMs and see how, as a society, we all group together and we can start solving longer term problems and not thinking so dumb as a herd. And then again, they also might just make us feel like we're really popular on social media when we're not, because it will feel so human, the people following us, but they won't be. All right, Anub Havix writes the pi proof, why straight lines are an illusion. This was like a total mind-blowing thing when I listened to it. I was like trying to fall asleep at night and had it in my headphones, and I just had this epiphany that there is no such thing as a straight line. There's just no way for me to get a straight line, not a pole, not something on paper. It just doesn't exist because the universe won't allow it. And not that I thought about it a lot growing up, but I will say I've always thought straight lines were possible, or a thing, obviously. I even had an idea for a coffee shop called Corners, where everything was a straight line until it hit a corner. And it would be on the corner of a street or something, and all the cups would be like square. Like it would be like a Minecraft style coffee shop. But anyways, the whole point is, even if I built that and it would look like that to us people, that's all an illusion. Deep down, no straight lines. So this article argues that the constant pi, famous for relating a circle's circumference to its diameter, is more than just a number. In fact, it's a deep universal code that reveals an infinite self-similar complexity underlining seemingly simple geometric forms. So the idea is that circles, curves, and fractals echo this infinite complexity, and that our everyday concept of a straight line may itself just be some kind of an illusion. It's a simplification imposed by our limited perception. According to this view, what we call straight might only be a human-scale approximation of a far deeper fractal-like structure woven into reality. Like, what? A fractal-like structure woven into reality. So look at these six-sided polygons, right? Like you definitely see straight lines all over there going on the inside and outside of this circle, but 12, 24, 48, 96, where'd it go? If you zoom in enough on this one, you would find something like that again. And then you would say, oh, there's the straight lines, but where are they here? Zoom out and they're gone. 3.1410. 3.0. The cosmic glitch, pi where it shouldn't be. Okay, and then get this. This is crazy. This simple fact is perhaps the most profound proof that pi is not just a geometric property. It's a fundamental constant of reality itself. So back in the 1700s, this French naturalist, he takes a large sheet of paper and he drew a series of parallel lines on it, all spaced equally apart. Then he took a handful of needles, all the same length, and he simply stood over the paper and dropped the needles randomly, hundreds and hundreds of times. He counted only two things, total needles dropped and the needles that hit a line. And then he took the ratio, ran it through this simple equation, no circles, no curves, no angles, just straight lines, and he gets pi. And the magic is that the more randomness you add, the more needles you throw, the more accurate your value of pi becomes. So what if pi isn't just a number in the universe? What if pi is the universe? That very thought unlocks the final door. We assume the universe has straight lines from one atom to another, but the orbit of planets, all of this stuff is built on space-time. It's built on curves. Gravity itself is not even a force. It's just curvature of space-time, and we're falling through it. And if the fundamental foundation of the universe is curvature, then the fundamental language of the universe must be pi. So yeah, if you want to support this channel, hit the hype button here on YouTube. You can see it's making a big difference right now. And I have to give you a big thank you because in my last video, I got 200,000 hype points. That's thanks to you. 226 of you came through, hit that hype button. That helps us stand out, and the channel's growing, and it wouldn't be without support of you guys hitting that button, or at least like commenting, liking, watching, sharing, obviously all that stuff that makes content like this go out there. So thanks for your time. I'll try to be back. Well, I probably won't be back in the studio for my next video either, but I'll try to find a place where I can at least be in one location the whole time. So we'll see you in the next video.